The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen only.
In this webinar, I'm going to cover two important topics, that is designing the course outcomes, and designing the questions. But the journey of this CO design and question design begins at program outcomes designing. And hence, I'm going to cover the process of POs designing in a couple of minutes, and then we will go to the main topic of the webinar. So here I'm bringing up some references to the graduate attributes, and then I will establish its correlation with the knowledge dimensions, and then we go to the course outcomes designing process. So these are some certain references. As you know, globally, this list of skills has been accepted as a reference point for program outcomes designing. This you will find is also given in the LOCF document of UGC, and this is used by engineering programs as well. But for non-engineering program or the program that are very specific, such as performing arts, there are different taxonomies. This is one of the examples of that. For management programs, they may want to use some other reference point, and they may go for these 10 graduate attributes as a reference to designing their program outcomes. In medical education, they use entrustable professional activities as a overall measure of the skills of the MBBS students. And these, if you look at closely all these graduate attributes, you will always find that these are divided into three main categories of the outcomes, which are knowledge, skill, and attitude. There is a direct correlation of these three categories with the knowledge dimensions. These knowledge dimensions are factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. These are the four knowledge dimensions. So knowledge category POs are essentially mapped to factual and conceptual dimensions. Skills POs are mapped to procedural, and attitude are mapped to metacognitive skills of the students. So here there is an example here: knowledge level program outcome. There is a example there in understand the nature and basic concepts of cell biology, biochemistry, taxonomy, and ecology. This is a good example of how a PO is to be designed when the factual and conceptual knowledge is to be delivered to the students. Example from procedural skills related POs. This could be a couple of examples there. Modern tool usage, create, select, apply appropriate techniques, resources. This is about using a modern tool, and you can relate it with the description of the procedural knowledge here. That is how to do the something, how to use, what are those methods, how to use those methods, skills, and the techniques. Is kind of how to part is covered in those program outcomes. So that is the expectations that we set for ourselves to design the curriculum such a way that these skills will be imparted to the students. When it comes to the example of a PO from the attitude category, these are the couple of examples I would like to present here. Pharmaceutical ethics, for example, honor personal values and apply ethical principles in professional and social contexts, is a good example of a PO that falls into attitude category. So attitude has direct relationship with metacognitive skills or metacognitive knowledge dimensions. It covers how individuals act, how they self-evaluate, how they self-critique, how they find out what they don't know and try to learn more. So lifelong learning is also an ability that falls into attitude category or metacognition, metacognitive knowledge. So we have to always keep this in mind when we think about designing program outcomes, because they have a direct relationship with the knowledge dimensions. If I would describe what knowledge and factual knowledge is, I would say that these are discrete, isolated content elements such as terminologies or knowledge of specific details and elements. These are dots. I mean, when we start learning something new, we are unable to connect multiple concepts that come across with us. These are just isolated elements. We are still not able to identify the relationship between them. Once we start doing that, then it forms conceptual knowledge. It covers classifications, categories, principles, generalizations, theories, models, and structures of the concepts. Now, when it comes to procedural knowledge, once we start knowing how to go from point A to point B, it gives us that how part, and that forms procedural knowledge, right? It covers essentially, uh, you know, as I mentioned earlier, how to do the things. So to summarize once again, these are the three top level knowledge dimensions: factual, conceptual, procedural. And the fourth one is metacognitive. I have created a couple of slides to explain this knowledge dimension in detail. And then once we cover that, we will start applying this knowledge to designing of the POs. And then we go to subsequently to the course outcome designing process. Metacognitive knowledge encompasses strategic knowledge, knowledge about the cognitive task. That is about, if we think about ourselves, it could be related to how we learn, and then how we want to regulate that process of learning to learn better, right? As simple as that, it could be like this. So there are two parts of metacognitive knowledge dimension. One is knowledge of the cognition, that is, about uh, how we are learning. Essentially, that knowledge is about the knowledge of the cognition. It has three components: declarative knowledge, that refers to knowing about the things. So it is essentially the facts and the concepts, factual and conceptual knowledge, right? It covers the procedural knowledge, refers to knowing something, right? How to do the things. And the conditional knowledge, which refers to knowing why and when aspects of the cognition. So that is why it is called as meta level knowledge, because it encompasses the factual, conceptual, and procedural knowledge, and it also takes us to the next level of this knowledge, that is knowing about why something has to be done and when something has to be done, because we might know 10 different things of doing things, but we must know when to use a particular method and when not to use a particular method, right? And why it should be like that. So that is the way uh, the metacognition occurs out of the once we start learning the facts, concepts, and the procedure, then we start knowing about when to do something and why. What are the essentially the impacts of doing something differently than what we had done earlier. So that is about the knowledge of the cognition. And then once we start knowing more and more about it, we know the efficacy of that. We start we that gives us an ability to regulate this process better and better and better. Our judgment, our accuracy of decisions improve over a period of time, and by regulating our own process of learning something new, because each such experience gives us some additional input each time, and if we ignore that, naturally then we are unable to regulate that. But if we start looking at the feedback and take that input to improve our own process of learning and decision making, applying it for our own benefits, then it is nothing but regulating that knowledge, regulating the cognition. So that these are the things that are related to, obviously, when it comes to the attitude category of the program outcomes, which is related to metacognitive domain, affective domain rather, and metacognitive skills, then naturally those POs which fall in that category requires obviously delivery of factual, conceptual, and procedural knowledge, And then only it is possible for us to build the abilities of metacognition into the students, right? So it is going to emerge over a period of time through some learning experiences that we want to design for the students to get those skills. So to explain this further, I have created these slides. I'm going to take an example of, let's say, critical thinking as one of the program outcomes, which is common across all the disciplines of higher education, and hence this is a very commonly, kind of desired program outcome, critical thinking. So it is now up to the program designer to think about or decide what is the level at which I want to take this critical thinking program outcome. Should I just keep it at factual conceptual knowledge level, or should I also add some skill oriented outcomes out of this, or should I also expect the students to learn the metacognition related skills here, if I would just think critical thinking? So you will say that critical thinking is a skill oriented program outcome, right? What it has to do with metacognition, right? That is something that will emerge. This answer to this question will emerge progressively. This is very interesting part of this whole webinar. Now, if I have to think about how am I going to impart the necessary skills to the students related to critical thinking. So program designer has some constraints also. The overall time that is available to teach the skills of critical thinking could be the first dimension that comes in picture. But and then what is the overall requirement of my program is another dimension that comes in picture. If a, if a program designer is developing a program for the students of law, then naturally critical thinking is a higher priority program outcome. But if it is a let's say performing arts as the program, maybe critical thinking is not as important as the students of laws. It is still important, but it need not be that intensely taught to the students. So these are the kind of trade-offs that the program designer has to think about, and based on that, what knowledge dimensions I have to kind of look at when I'm trying to teach these skills to the students, those come in picture. So, will I have to only cover factual and conceptual knowledge, that is about what is critical thinking, right? Just to teach that much and leave it to that, or should I teach the students how to think critically, right? And then is that enough for my program, or should I also take them to the next level? When and why to think critically? So these are the kind of questions the program designer has to ask uh, when the curriculum is being designed. So critical thinking is the program outcome. Then the challenge in front of the program designer is to what level the PO has to be taken to, right? Because this is something that is going to drive the curriculum designing, and obviously that will have impact on the course outcomes, and obviously that will have impact on the assessments, the activities that you would design, and hence the questions, right? So that is the relationship end to end here. The next, once you decide what is the level at which you want the students to be taken, then you have to think about, all right, I have now decided that I want the students to be taken to how level, how to apply the critical thinking. Then I have to choose, okay, what cognitive level I must also consider in relation to what I'm expecting the students to achieve. So obviously, if I want students to be at how level, then just remember understand is not good enough, right? So I have to take them at least to apply analyze level, right? To when I if I'm expecting them to go to how level, isn't it? Or I may do I want them to take to evaluate and create level also? That is to be decided by the program designer based on the discipline of the this higher education. I mean the purpose of that program, and based on the requirements, these decisions have to be taken by the program designer. The next level is to think about, if I would have to take them to students to procedural how level, then what are the levels? Are there any kind of competency levels in doing how? Because doing how could mean that, are they expected to just repeat something that the teacher would do, or they have to really exhibit the knowledge of the critical thinking by doing it correctly? Each time they are offered to solve a problem, think critically about it. They should be able to do that. So what is the level of the competency I am expecting here as a program designer from this program outcome, right? So do I have to take them to precision level, or articulation level, or naturalization level, right? That is again based on the time at hand, right? Because the moment you start raising the bar, you may have to have more number of courses, higher amount of curriculum designing has to be allocated, right, or associated with this program outcome, because you are raising the bar, right? So this is about the psychomotor level, uh, these levels of the competencies that you are thinking about. The next uh, part of the decision making is about affective domain level. So where do I want the students? Okay, fine. I want them to be at analyze level, and precision is the level of the competency I want them to reach. But what is the relative uh, affective domain level that they have to achieve? Should I expect them to just be at responding valuing level, or should they be reaching the a level which will allow them to also uh, accommodate the others points of views, and then self evaluate their own points of views and come out with something unique, right, or something new. So am I expecting them that from them? So that is the kind of affective domain level uh, taxonomy also can come in picture here. So once I am done with my assessment of what I want them to do, I might find a path here, that this is my expectation, right? Critical thinking, procedural, I want them to go to procedural. I want them to achieve the analyzed level of cognitance, cognitive level. They should be able to do it precisely, and they should be able to reach a level of valuing their own commitment to always uh, you know achieve those goals given by me here. And their response should be timely, their response should be professional, and they all the commitments given to them, which they must value that, and then respond to my assessments given to them, or the total term work given to them must be also uh, kind of you know uh, addressed by them time to time. Is that what I'm expecting them at the affective domain level? Something that I will can decide. Now I will come out with this blueprint of my critical thinking PO. So this gives me end-to-end idea of how am I going to assess this program outcome. Uh, there's a plan that I'm making now, that I want these. This is the PO, critical thinking, and I want these knowledge dimensions also to be covered here. I want, then I will decide what syllabus I have to design. There has to be some courses which will deliver the discipline knowledge. There will have to be some activities which will take the students to how level, procedural activities based on the disciplinary knowledge. Then there could be some case studies based on the disciplinary knowledge. When I expecting them to also learn the metacognition here, I will design some activities based on the reflective journaling or group discussions or some kind of role playing. Will that be good enough for me to see how they are valuing others' viewpoints? Are they critically thinking about why somebody said something, and then accommodating those viewpoints? and then showing that kind of firm commitment to always look at others' points also with this, and then use those into your arguments as well. So that is the kind of skill I want them to also achieve there. And we have already decided that we have to take them to analyze level, right? But when it comes to factual conceptual knowledge part of my curriculum related to critical thinking, my expectation is that they must reach a remember or understand level. Some of the content which I will deliver through uh, the procedural part of the knowledge or the curriculum, I want them to reach apply level, and some case studies which I am going to design, I want them to show whether or not they are able to analyze something. And again, these activities related to metacognition will have this expectation of responding and valuing level of metacognition. So this gives me a wonderful blueprint of how exactly I'm going to measure the outcomes, design the curriculums, and then analyze whether the most of the students are achieving critical thinking abilities, right? So if this is the way, each and every PO of your program has to be analyzed, because this goes as a blueprint to somebody who is going to design the curriculum, right? So now, based on the time at hand, you will decide how am I going to deliver the factual and conceptual knowledge, right? Will there be one course is sufficient for that, or will I have to design two courses maybe? So one second course may span the factual, conceptual, and procedural knowledge also, right? So that's the way I will try to start designing my curriculum. Like quite a few part of the procedural knowledge comes through activities that we design, right? It doesn't have to be a classroom teaching. It will have to be an activity. There could be some case study, and metacognition can be taught through group discussion simply, right? So that is how I will design my assessments or activities or case studies or group discussion to now make sure that I'm teaching them some disciplinary knowledge, and also the procedural knowledge. Then I'm taking them to those desired level of cognitions, as well as the competencies, as well as the uh, affective domain related levels. So this will happen through the questions designing. This will happen through some kind of problem definition, synopsis, or case study, or activities, right? So that is how you will design your assessment tools. So there are assessment method could be designing an activity. Assessment method could be case study, and the tool can be then designed by you in order to achieve those levels of the cognitions or the competencies or the metacognitions. The other courses which are indirectly teaching the critical thinking skills, maybe there could be quite a few. Just the courses which are directly associated with critical thinking are obviously directly contributing to your program outcome. But there could be many other courses which are indirectly contributing to the critical thinking abilities, right? So you have to recognize that how many such courses are there which are also teaching critical thinking abilities. So those are your direct contributors to your program outcomes. Sorry, the indirect ones. And the direct ones are the courses which you have designed directly to teach the critical thinking, right? And then once, since you already know, what level of cognition you want the students to be at, based on that, you have to design the questions. So for the disciplinary knowledge level course, you are going to conduct some assessment. It could be any tool, it could be quizzes, it could be even the short answer questions, right? But you have to design those to take the students to remember and understand. The other assessment, you may want to also add apply level questions there, so and so forth, right? Activities will take them to apply, analyze, uh, and case study also will take them to analyze, and group discussion can take them to respond and valuing levels of the metacognition. So this is how it clearly defines, right, how you are going to design your curriculum, how you are going to kind of span your teaching and students learning over a period of time, what activities are going to give you the assessment of this program outcome, and hence it also gives you an idea of how you have to think about the Bloom's taxonomy level or the cognitive levels when you are designing the questions. So this is a direct end-to-end map of how you are going to assess your program outcomes. Is this clear? Any questions here? I'm just taking a few minutes to check whether there are any questions related to what we have learned, and then I'll take the next step. That is right. This is the rubric to validate the program outcome. That's absolutely right. All right. Yeah, so there are no questions at this point in time. Now we come back here. This is the blueprint that we have designed, right? And then we'll use this blueprint now to design the course outcomes as well as the questions, right? So now we'll first of all start thinking about course level blueprint. Right now we design the PO blueprint. Now we'll go to the course level blueprint. So there are multiple courses, right, which are going to contribute to achieving the critical thinking PO. So we'll look at one course of that. We'll do the analysis of the content of that, and then we'll think about the outcomes to be designed and the questions to be designed for that. We have already identified the desired cognitive levels in the earlier steps, right? Then we'll decide the assessment strategy, and then we will design the course outcomes as a byproduct of this process. So let's say course 1, course 2 we have already identified earlier. Course 3 could be, or you can say various courses the third part of this, which are indirectly contributing to the knowledge, critical thinking PO. So these courses have many subtopics, right? So there are subtopics here. Now, which you have to identify which subtopic belongs to which category, or sorry, which knowledge dimension. So you may have to identify your subtopics and exactly identify what is that procedural knowledge, what is that factual or conceptual knowledge, or the metacognitive level knowledge that you are delivering through your courses. So you may come out with a distribution of topics like this, and you can see here that these are the desired level of cognitions also, right? So any subtopic that you have identified as your factual, you know directly now I have to take the students to remember level. So when you design the questions related to these topics, the expectation level is already set here, right? Likewise, conceptual, likewise, procedural, likewise, metacognitive. So this is very clear now, right? You exactly know what is the subtopic related to what knowledge dimension and what is the desired level of cognition. Nobody has to tell you, because this is coming from the program designer to you as a teacher, that hey, this is what is the blueprint, and whenever you find that there is a topic related to factual knowledge, make sure that you design the questions to take the students to remember level, right? So it's as simple as this. Now uh, we will choose one course which has all the four knowledge dimensions. So it appears that course 2 has all the four dimensions. So I'll take this as an example and go further. So this is the course 2, which has multiple units. There are subtopics we have identified, and we have also identified the knowledge dimensions, right, in the earlier stages. Now what is required is that I want to also analyze now whether or not rather the desired category of the cognition is also identified by us earlier, right? So these two things are already with us. Now we will build what cognitive process we require, and what action verb I want to choose very carefully out of that. It may not be one action verb you will be satisfied with. You may have to take multiple action verbs to design your course outcomes and design your questions for that from that, right? So I'm to simplify this process, to explain this in simple words, I'm going to choose only one action verb here, but you know what I mean, right? You would have to take more than one action verb there. So now, since we are entering into the zone of learning, so far we were talking about teaching, right? Knowledge dimensions. Now we have to look at the other side of the table, the learners. And learning process goes through the the cognitive process, which is also called as Bloom's taxonomy. And hence, whenever the teaching comes into the reference, we have to start also thinking about the learning process and the, the process through which the students will go. So classically, it is defined that remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create are the 6 steps of learning through which the students will start learning your course. So that is as simple as this, right? So this is a cognitive process. Now there are different levels of cognitive process, 6 levels, which are explained here. I'm not going to spend too much of time on this because we have to finish this webinar in around 75 minutes. So I'll just keep this at a higher level right now. Now, in medical education, they use Miller's pyramid: knows how, shows how, and does. So it is conceptually, it is exactly the same as the Bloom's taxonomy. In ancient Indian philosophy, there are 8 such steps mentioned by them. In all said and done, uh, the cognitive process, which has 6 steps in it, uh, starts with remembering things, right? So remember is the foundation of this cognitive process. If the remember step is missing, is weak, then the transfer of the knowledge is going to be a problem. And therefore, uh, it is expected that you design quizzes, MCQs, or kind of objective type of questions to make sure that this foundation is strong. If the it is weak, then naturally all other steps in the cognitive process are likely to be weak only, because they are unable, students are unable to remember that. That is the kind of importance that we have to give to remember. It is not the kind of low means, it doesn't mean it's a derogatory kind of lower level of cognition. It is just to classify that this is high lower level, and the other side, the analyze, evaluate, and create are the higher order thinking skill. But those will not be achieved by the students if the remember foundation itself is weak, right? So that's why recalling the information, the data, the knowledge again and again is extremely crucial, and that therefore in outcomes based education, remember is actually given a lot of importance. But the quizzes that you want to give to the students may not be the formal ones all the time. There could be some additional activities or the homework that could be given to the students to continuously recall that information and internalize it frequently. So we talked so far about the cognitive levels. I was referring to the psychomotor domain related similar taxonomy. I was referring it to as levels of competencies, right? So these are the levels of competencies. In the original research done by Dr. Benjamin Bloom, Anderson, Cratfall, and others in their team, they had not done the research on this procedural knowledge level, a taxonomy. It is written there on the website, so this is not my hypothesis. I'm just referring to the what is written on the websites at various places. Uh, so this was then derived research by others who came out with this kind of taxonomy of psychomotor domain. So there are either 5, you will find that they're talking about either 5 levels or 4 levels like this, but essentially, the research is directed towards almost the same thing. So this is to be considered by us, because when we are teaching skills, we have to always think about what is the level of that skill, competency rather, that we have to take the students to, because that is going to define what activities you will design for them to go to that level, right? So just saying that apply doesn't mean anything actually. To what level of application? Just saying take them to the level of analysis, then just saying that doesn't mean anything. So we have to always think about what the psychomotor domain taxonomy I must expect there. I should take them to the what level of the taxonomy there, right? Likewise, this is the attitude category of or the affective domain taxonomy, which is also rewritten by many education researchers later on. This is one of the examples, and you can obviously read from know more about it from various resources on the websites on the internet. So these are the different levels of affective domain taxonomy. So we have to consider all these knowledge dimensions, right? We have to consider all the three domains of learning: knowledge domain, psychomotor domain, affective domain. Otherwise, education cannot be completed. Uh, the higher education especially is supposed to address more and more psychomotor and affective domain skills, and as the technology evolves, artificial intelligence evolves, the disciplinary knowledge is best left to the robots, in my opinion. And this is likely to happen very soon, by the way. And teachers may have to give more stress and emphasis on procedural skills and the metacognitive skills, because that is how they are going to mentor the students in the future. Orientation of the higher education very soon is likely to change because of the advancement in technology. So, I was trying to say earlier as well, when we were discussing about what is metacognitive, as we say, we talked about what is this meta level of cognition, right? It is there everywhere. Whenever we start teaching factual conceptual knowledge or procedural knowledge, it is associated with that, because the combination of all these three dimension is going to create the fourth level of knowledge dimension, the meta level, which sits on the top of everything, right? So it's like, it's a global circle over there about these three dimensions of knowledge. That's what I wanted to kind of convey here. So just by I'm bringing back the earlier blueprint of the program outcomes. So here, the dimension which was missing there, I'm adding here, right? Here you can see that I just don't want to say that I want to take them to the apply level. I want to define what is the competence level, like this. I want them to go up this content which I will deliver here. I want them to go to the apply level and be able to imitate or practice. That is the level of apply I want them to reach. In the case of case studies, I want to go take them to the analyze level, but again, practice is the level of the psychomotor domain, to where I want them to go. I don't want them to become researchers, right, or scientists there. That's not the goal of my program. So I am limiting my expectations to this level. So these are the additional dimensions you must add whenever you think about procedural skills to being imparted, or the activities that are being designed. And this input is going to be used by us to arrive at the cognitive process which I want to consider in designing my curriculum. So I will first start with factual and remember combination of knowledge dimensions and desired level of cognition. What it means is that these subtopics which are here are at factual level of the knowledge dimension, right? I want students to reach only remember level of cognition. So I have to then look at what other inputs I require here. Whether I want them to recognize something or recall some knowledge all the time, and then what should be the assessment method I should use here? What should be the format? Is the quiz a tool? It could be multiple choice type of questions. So this is a method, and the tool could be quiz, right? Or it could be some other activity related to these type of questions. So that is the kind of call that we have to take, right? So if I want the students to recall, let's say, the knowledge which will be taught to them, then these are the kind of verbs I will try to use to design my questions, right? So this is exactly what I'm trying to do here. So this is your reference over here. If now I want, let's say, them to reach recall, and I'll use different action verbs like describe, define, quote, and this is a direct input to me now to design the questions, isn't it? Nothing more is required. So this is how you can actually think about how the program outcome is going to be measured, what activities, what is the syllabus design because of the expectation, desired expectations or the expectations of the program outcome, and what courses are being designed to deliver that knowledge, design, sorry, the skill, and then uh, I have to look at the courses, zoom into that, find out the subtopics, find the knowledge dimension, the category of the cognition is already defined in the blueprint. I have to now think about, okay, how am I going to assess them, their learning? So is recalling good enough? That's fine. Then what action verbs I am going to think about? Describe, define, and quote could help me to assess the students whether they have learned and reached the level of remember for all the topics which are related to factual knowledge dimension. Now there are certain there is certain content, subtopics are there which have to be taken to understand level. If you recall the PO blueprint, right? So similar to what we have just earlier learned, there is a there are categories of the cognitions of related to understand also. These are the category: interpreting, exemplifying, classifying, and suggested methods of assessments are also given here. So action verbs are also there. So if I would now take next uh, knowledge chunk here, which is this is the one that is referred to, which requires the students to understand this conceptual knowledge, then I must now think about what action verbs I want here and cognitive process that is good enough for me to assess the students. So I have taken interpreting, classifying, inferring as three different processes I want to be associated with these subtopics here, and I'll pick these action verbs. So this is exactly what has to be done now in addressing all other knowledge dimensions, all other syllabus that is designed here to deliver the procedural knowledge also, because now we are entering into apply zone of our blueprint. So I'll take certain parts of the procedural knowledge, which are and these subtopics have to be taken to apply level. So similar reference I have here, from which I will choose the desired cognitive level. However, there is a expectation of what is the competence level I want students to achieve. So here I want to use this taxonomy, which earlier we have seen, and then choose the right combinations of the verbs here. I have to also pick certain verbs from this taxonomy and make sure that I am kind of using those in my course blueprint. Now I am going towards certain other there could be certain other apply level skills, sorry, apply level content which I want students to reach the precision level. So obviously then I have to refer to other keywords here or the action verbs which are related to precision level of the competence. So that's how I will design my blueprint. When now we come to the content of my course, which is associated with analyze level of uh, cognitive level, right? So let's say this procedural knowledge I have to take the students to analyze level. So naturally I will refer to similar such rubric, and then I will choose the action verbs accordingly. So this is how you can build your uh, course blueprint by using the idea of uh, think idea of identifying the cognitive process in the action verb. The remaining three dimensions are already defined in your program level blueprint, which is direct input to you. Right? And then finally, we come to metacognitive skills. Here, I want students to reach up to the level of respond or react, and action verb could be react. So this gives me a comprehensive understanding of my content, which I'm going to teach uh, through a course to the students. Any questions here? Dr. Asim, you mentioned that you're unable to hear anything, but please, others, please let me know if my voice is clearly reaching out to you. Yeah, so many of the participants have, confirmed that my voice is clearly audible. So, Professor Asim, please check your internet connection or the audio devices. Yeah, cool. Thank you for the confirmation. Yeah, are there any questions related to the topics that we covered so far? Is there any confusion? Should we go back to certain slides and rediscuss that? Thank you, Dr. Yaduvir, for your words of appreciation. There is one comment here by Professor Muthu. While making the syllabus, having a unit-wise syllabus or grouping Bloom's levels. Yeah, actually, sir, you grouping when you are designing the syllabus, units are kind of logical logical groups of the subtopics. Traditionally, the books have been printed, in by defining those units and all that. But if you if you want to kind of redesign that hierarchy, then that needs to be done to make it very clear to uh, everybody, the teachers and also the program designers, like how exactly this content has to be delivered. So instead of just grouping everything into unit, if there is some along with that, if you also start mapping the knowledge dimensions related to that, it will be much more easier for the teachers also to kind of interpret how exactly this syllabus is designed. So that's why these blueprints are very important. These don't exist right today, right? So I'm sharing this idea for the first time to the audience here. Actually, earlier even I had not designed this idea. This is just recent one which I was trying to think about how to clearly define, think about how to achieve a program outcome, how to use that idea to design the curriculum, and this is how that process led me to design this blueprint. So this is actually a very recent idea that came up to me. There is one question by Professor Trilok Chandran. Is there any difference for engineering courses and management courses? Now, in what context? I did not get this question. If you could elaborate that, it would be great. One more question by Professor Ravi Shah. While contemplating a systematic format of learning, which stage needs to be emphasized and should it be required? Can we move back and forth amongst different stages of learning? Uh, I somehow understood what you're trying to say here. Uh, so essentially, we know that in first go, our design is not going to be really, really nice, right? Or effective. So that's exactly why. outcomes based education is important philosophy to embrace and implement it really kind of comprehensively, because once we design a program, we have to uh, start collecting the data, analyze and see whether those things are happening. Now, if your critical thinking program outcome is supposed to be taken to how level, right, and then that to at analyze level, right? We know that. Now, from the data that you have collected after the as the batch is moving on, right? Batch is progressing, and you're getting a hint from the data that you're analyzing that actually the students are not able to achieve the analyzed level. We know that 100% students cannot achieve that, but you are expecting at least 25% students should achieve the analysis level, and you're actually not finding that. That means what? Either your program has to give more time to add more activities, or something else is wrong which you have to change. And that is what this continuous improvement is. So current understanding of outcomes based education is limited to what is defined in the in the accreditation documents, and whether or not we are implementing it, right? But OB is an extremely critical concept. It is a very good quality assurance tool for all of you to continuously evolve and your curriculum design. And you will see that you're actually helping the students to learn those top level skills which you earlier thought should be delivered to the students, and that these inputs which you collect will help you to take use that feedback to see whether any change is required in your curriculum design based on the data that you're receiving. And that's why implementing OB should be done by a very systematic, thoughtful, methods to be in place. You have to use imports like technologies to collect the data, analyze and give that feedback to you continuously, because it's many times doing it manually is impossible. And that is how it is going to help you to redesign your curriculum in time to come. There's a question by Dr. Babu that, do you offer help for NBA accreditation for management institutions? Actually, the discipline of the higher education doesn't matter. We obviously, personally, I am also helping many institutions, and as well as there are my other colleagues who take care of other aspects of the accreditations. Right. So this is what my response is, Dr. Ravi, to you. Um, there is one more question. Let me take by Professor Gomati. Whether theory part question analysis and create knowledge is possible. I understood what your question is. It is possible. It is now, that is exactly what I've been um, referring to, right? It is about the time at hand, which it's a trade-off that you have to come up with. The disciplinary knowledge that you are delivering, whether you want to take that level, take the cognitive level to apply, analyze, or create level, or you don't have the time, unnecessarily you will spend a lot of time there, and other important things will not get enough attention, right? So you have to limit your expectations, and that is exactly what the trade-off is. So you must know that I have done a trade-off here, I have done a trade-off here, this is why I have taken this decision of adding this activity, adding this content, and let me see whether the students are finally achieving those program outcomes, enough number of students, right, or desired number of students. And if you're not finding that, then you have to think, go back to your curriculum design and make those changes, right? So it's a continuous process. You will not have the right answer immediately after you implement something, right? So let me go ahead now. There are quite a few other questions also, but we have scarcity of time, so I need to move on. So here now we have done enough groundwork to start thinking about how to design the course outcomes and the questions now. In fact, we are already there, right? But when it comes to course outcome designing, you must know what is the action that is expected here, which is defined by the action verb. And the second part is the knowledge that is related to the content that you are delivering. So you are delivering this part of the content, which I want to take to this level, let's say classify. And that if you create a kind of sentence of this, which is human readable, logical, full form of a sentence, it will become a course outcome, right? If you are teaching the higher levels of the cognitive process, then you have to add the condition also, that I would certify that you have reached this level of the performance if you show me these things. So that also can become part of your course outcome statement. If you're taking them to even higher levels of the cognitive process, then you have to also define the criteria. If you are coming out with this answer, but then I want you to compare it with something else, which is standard or something, and then show me, why you were off by 2 points, or or you were exactly the same. Your readings are matching with the global standard. Tell me why. What did you do differently? Because others are struggling to reach that kind of exact match. So that could be the criteria. That show me why you were able to match that criteria, or why you couldn't match that criteria. So that is the definition that you have to mm, add there to make this course outcome statement complete. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you are measuring the uh, whether or not students have reached the remember level, right, then only the action, verb, and knowledge could be good enough. Even in understand level of cognition, action verb you already know, right? Clarify, contrast, list, define, which you have already defined in our course blueprint. And what content you are delivering is the knowledge part, right? When you move upwards, then you start using change, construct kind of action verbs. But at that time, you also think that you have to add a condition, right? By using certain tool, you have to use this tool only. You can't decide, on your own. But you have to use this tool and show me whether you are able to change something or construct something, right? So that's the condition. As you move upwards, you will have to add also the criteria. For example, classify, compare by using a model, right? And compare with standards or other students' analysis. That's the criteria, because it's analysis, right? Evaluation. Again, the contrast critique by using the analyzed data. Now, analysis is already done. You already have a ready-made input for you to evaluate something else, and then explain why the results were off or aligned. So this is evaluate level criteria that you will define. When you are taking the students to create level, then you will expect them to enhance the earlier process, right? You have now done enough analysis. You have also done the evaluation of your results with others' results. And now, do you have any optimized process? Show it to me. Enhance, formulate. Gaps should be minimized by keeping the cost lower. So just 10 step process is reduced to 6 steps is not good enough. Is it going to reduce the cost as well? Right? That is the create level expectation. So this is how you have to construct your course outcome statement. You have to first of all think about what is the level of cognition. Then depending upon, you have to add either criteria or condition in the statement. Is this clear? So now coming back to our blueprint, we have the action verbs here, right? This is the action verb. We already know that. We already know what knowledge are we delivering. Subtopics are grouped in that manner, right? And what else we need? We need condition and criteria, right? So these two things we have to kind of define when you have to construct it. So this slide I could not complete actually to my satisfaction. So I'm just, don't take this. There could be some mistakes also here, but this is what was trying to build uh, before this webinar. So, but how this is very, in my opinion, this is very simple. You require four components of the course outcome, right? Knowledge verb, action verb, knowledge, criteria, and condition. So you already know this because this comes from your course blueprint, and then you kind of add your statement that kind of describes what topics you are covering, and then what conditions and criteria that you want to also be there to complete your construction of your course outcome statement. Uh, these are the examples of nicely designed course outcome statements. These are there in your NAC accreditation document. You can always find it from there. But now, whenever you look at one course outcome statement, start looking at whether you are able to find out the action, knowledge, condition, and criteria in that. Can you clearly define? If you are not, it is incorrect statement. There are many misconceptions around course outcomes. There is a each unit has one course outcome. It has got absolutely no meaning, uh, right? There are 6 units, so I will have 6 course outcomes. These are all initial steps that education institutions are taking to be able to start embark on the journey of implementing OB. But if you really look at this philosophy or methodology of the quality assurance of higher education, then OB implementation has to be done extremely seriously. Only then there is a possibility of solving many issues related to unemployability of the students and the quality of the graduates that are coming out of the institutions. Then OB is one of the very highly uh, kind of trusted quality assurance tools that you can use and rely on. So that's what I wanted to say, and we are very now close to ending this webinar. Before we conclude today's webinar, I'll also ask you one question not related to this slide. Ignore this slide on the screen right now, but give me your response on following. When you think about course outcomes designing and the questions designing, what comes first to your mind? Whether you think about course outcomes first and then design the questions, or you design the questions first and then you think about the course outcomes. What comes first? Okay, there are enough responses here. So actually we have to think about the questions first and then the course outcomes comes. So I'll just take you back to our blueprint. Yeah, so this is the blueprint, right? Which we designed just now. While designing this blueprint, did we ever think about the course outcome? We never, right? What was the process? What were the questions that we were asking to ourselves? We were asking ourselves, how am I going to assess whether the students are reaching this desired level of cognition? I wanted to make sure that the student will reach these levels, right? Understand, apply, understand, analyze, understand. I was always thinking about whether or not my course designing will take them to these levels. Then I was thinking about how will I assess them whether or not they are reaching this level. For that, I started thinking about cognitive process and the action verbs. So I will use these action verbs to design my questions to see whether they are reaching these cognitive levels or not. So did we ever think about course outcomes designing? We never. Actually, we have to always first of all think about what is the desired level of cognition and how am I ensure that the students are reaching to that level, and how what will tell me that. So these are the activities, these are the quizzes, these are the assessment, this is a midterm exam, this is the project, this is lab, right? There could be direct, there could be indirect tools which will tell me whether or not students are reaching this desired level of cognition. And I'm going to use I'm going to draft my questions using these action verbs. For example, there could be other ways of doing this also, but this is one of the ways, right? And that gives me the idea that okay, if I would design these activities, case studies or labs and practicals, and as you know, the questions of subjective objective in nature, the output of that will help me to understand whether most of the students are reaching these cognitive levels. There is a discussion about course outcome here. So what is course outcome is nothing but the when you think about how I assess them, the verbalization of these thoughts, verbalizing this thought is nothing but the course outcome. It is just the interpretation of your thoughts, which is written by you on a piece of paper to communicate others that these are the course outcomes. So the course outcomes are nothing but the thoughts about how you are going to evaluate the students, assess them, whether or not they are reaching the desired cognitive level, right? That's why it gave us the definition of the course outcomes in this manner. So more and more courses as you teach in the as the students graduate from one term to other term, the content that you design has to move to the right side and towards down, right, of these levels. So the clustering of your content should always be, as the students progress, it should move downwards from factual conceptual to procedural metacognitive, and it should go towards right, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, right? So that's the kind of characteristics we should see in your curriculum. Now the biggest problem is misalignment in the outcomes, the questions, and the instruction design. Here, I'll just give a couple of examples. So, outcome is learning to apply analytical skills, but the question that you're asking measures only the factual recall. So, it's a false positive because enough number of students will, more number of students will answer this question correctly, because it's not really what was taught was different of higher level, and the questions are just factual recall related. Many students will pass that question and it will kind of give you higher level of attainments, but that's false positive. Likewise, if you're teaching instruction strategies, I'm sorry, the only the summarizing the arguments of different authors, and the question is actually measuring the students' ability to compare and critique the arguments of various authors. So naturally, students will fail to perform, and it will be a lower attainment level that you will see there, which will be false negative because there is a misalignment between what was taught and what is being assessed. So that's why the questions, instructions, and the questions have to match, align with each other. OB says that you must continuously assess. Um, there should be more and more formative assessments. A lot of autonomy should be given to the teachers, and the progression of the students should be seen from one assessment to the other. You should be able to connect these two assessments followed by each other, which are formative in nature, and then see whether the students are progressing. The teacher who is well aware of the outcomes-based education asks three important questions to herself or himself. What do I want the students to know when they leave this course, my course, right? How am I going to teach them? My instruction strategy should align with the desired level of cognition, isn't it? And then I have to design the assessments, use the right tools, design the right questions to see whether the learning outcomes are being achieved by the students or not. So that's the reason all these three elements, outcomes, the instruction design, and the assessment, must be aligned with each other. Otherwise, the program outcome will never be achieved. So obviously, Inpods is one of the technologies that allows you to do this very efficiently. Uh, Obviously, I am not here to only to kind of deliver this knowledge to all of you. We have learned this through hard work, and while designing our technology platform and implementing it at several places in India, right from north to south, where east to west, several institutions are using Inpods for outcomes-based education implementation. And through these experiences, we have learned these things. I have added some research done by others, and combine these two inputs to come out with something unique here in this webinar, which I've explained to you today. So, essentially, the implementing OB needs to be done with the right footing, right process, right method, right rigor to do it. Use technology such as Inpods to collect the data, analyze it, use the input to improve your curriculum, and also design the questions which are focused on outcomes to avoid any misalignment with that. So that's about my inputs to you today through this webinar, and do reach out to me if you have any kind of questions, or if you want to use Inpods technology for OB implementation. Here are my contact details. I would love to address your requirements. So thank you very much to participate in this webinar today. I couldn't address all the questions because we have limitation of time. If you want to conduct this webinar, I'm sorry, this kind of faculty development program on your campus for all the teachers of your institution, I would be more than happy to visit your institute and conduct this faculty development program, which will cover many topics which we couldn't cover today, and more elaboration can be done. And it could be at lower pace. We can go through this and cover more topics about outcomes-based education, right? So that's something that I wanted to also communicate to you. Thank you so much once again. Let me remind you, all of you, that after as soon as the webinar ends, exactly 1 hour after that, you will receive an email which will have a link to download the certificate. Give it a time. Sometimes it won't get downloaded immediately within one click, but definitely it gets downloaded. Thank you so much. Professor Chandrapal, my contact numbers are shared here. Bye bye, take care, and best wishes for your OB implementation journey.